The Morgan Thomas Show. Brought to you by Black's Tire Inc.
Here we go. It's another episode of The Morgan Thomas Show. I'm your host and producer, Morgan Thomas, and joining me tonight, sans Alan Adams, is a good friend down below, Houston Burnett. Thank you for joining, Houston. Welcome.
Like a cardboard cutout of Alan with like a mask on, sans the Atlanta Braves or New York Mets or something like that. We should have had that today.
Yeah, we need something up there in the corner, some sort of cardboard cutout. But it was kind of a last minute thing. Alan's doing all right. Everybody's okay, but he's not going to be joining us tonight unless he wants to sneak in towards the end, I guess. But again, thank you for joining us, whether you're on Facebook, YouTube, Periscope, Twitter, wherever you're watching or listening to the show, or if you're on a podcast afterwards. Thank you so much. Make sure you like and share the video and join us every Monday night, 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time on YouTube and Facebook Live. We really appreciate the love and support. We're getting closer. Man, we are getting closer to college football. I'm looking at the calendar, and I was actually watching some shows this morning talking about there's going to be some games this weekend. Now, maybe not any games that you're really interested in, but just to be able to say college football is starting this weekend is pretty exciting. And then there's some other things coming up the next weekend, kind of like some warm-up games to get you ready for the second weekend of September. That is the week that we're looking forward to as Clemson Tiger fans and as fans in general, because that's typically when the other teams are going to get playing as well too. So if you're an ACC fan in general, not many more weeks left. This week's exciting for me because I got a short one. I'm going on vacation after this. Going to work tomorrow. Try to pretend to work tomorrow, and then thinking about the beach and the waves hitting my toes. And going to be enjoying that for about a week. And then I'm going to be in the ocean with my mask, in case you're wondering, Houston. I'm going to be that guy swimming with my mask on.
So effective.
But I'm looking forward to it because I will say this week's not been that good. If you follow me on Facebook, you've probably seen this. Our family dog of almost 10 years passed away. We had to let her go. She had lymphoma, like aggressive late stage cancer. And so she was like a child to us. And, I know a lot of dog lovers, pet lovers out there can relate to us. So, but thank you for the well wishes and everybody and the love over on Facebook. Really appreciate it. So again, like I said, some tough things to deal with last week, or middle of last week, but some good things coming up this week to kind of keep my mind off that. And I always say stay busy, because Houston, I don't know if I told you this or not, but I've got my undergrad from Anderson, and I've got my MBA from Clemson, and I've just officially started back at Liberty, as all the controversies going on at Liberty right now, but I'm not involved in that. But I started back doing graphic design. So, MBA, business management, graphic design. I'm trying to get all things here. And then, as you and I have talked before, maybe one day get my pilot license. Who knows? I'm a man of many different interests.
The most interesting man in the upstate. That's how we should make T-shirts for that. You want to get into graphic design, man? The most interesting man in the upstate, Morgan Thomas. There you go, instant idea right there. But I'm glad you're at least able to get away for a few days. Take some vacation from vacation to the beach, as Alan would say if he were here. But also too, man, feel for you, praying for your family. That's tough. I got two dogs of my own, and they're really great. And so I'm glad that you get a chance to get away for a few days. But first, we got to talk a little bit about some football. I mean, this might be the most anticipated FCS game in the history of history. When we watch the powerhouses that are the University of Central Arkansas and Austin Peay University, because I'm going to tell you, I'm probably going to watch with bated breath to an empty stadium in Mobile, Alabama, between two FCS teams, and I will love it. I will love it.
Long time Austin P fan, as you know here from me. So I'm also elated for that game. But again, thank you so much for watching. If you're over on YouTube, if you're over on Facebook or Periscope, if you didn't know, like I said, we have our podcast as well. You can check that out. Typically, the podcast is our live show replay. So if you missed the live show, no worries. No worries. You'll be able to catch it on the podcast, typically Tuesday or Wednesday, depending on how busy I am. I try to get that up there for you. So if you like to listen to the show rather than watch, again, you can also call in. Let me throw up the number here for that. That is Charleston Sports Pub Hotline, 864-772-6674. You can call in and be a part of the show. We have 5 open phone lines where you can get in and let us know what you want to talk about. Now, let me tell you about the agenda. But before we get into the agenda, let me tell you about our primary show sponsor, and that is Black's Tire Inc., family owned and operated since 1971. If you need new tires, brakes, alignments, tire repair, or just looking for a friendly professional to help answer your questions, check out Black's Tire Inc., located 1415 East Main Street, Westminster, South Carolina. Now, Westminster, South Carolina, you're wondering, where in the world is that? Well, it's not too far. If you're a Clemson fan, you probably know this. You go past the stadium, go into Seneca, go past Seneca into Westminster, kind of just a little bit north of Seneca. You'll see it there on the right as you get into downtown Westminster. Go check out Black's Tire Inc. Preston and Dale have been a supporter of our show since day one. We really appreciate them being our presenting sponsor tonight. Again, Black's Tire Inc., 864-647-9292. They've hooked us up, and we really appreciate them. But again, back to the agenda. I got a few things I want to talk about. I got an article that I saw recently on ACC Insider, and then the AP Top 25 came out. So that's something that we're going to go to discuss through. There are a little some head-scratching things for me. But then when I decided, I said, Houston, I want to go back through the top 25 and take out those teams that are not going to be playing from the Pac-12 and the Big Ten. And then I started to kind of reevaluate myself in our original list that we made a couple of weeks ago. And I got a couple of teams that I want to mention to you just to see what you think, and also mention to the chat room, mention to the viewers out there, see what they think about some things that I'm seeing that kind of make me rethink a few teams and make me think that some of these teams that I thought were elite maybe aren't so elite. And some of these teams that I maybe, kind of hung up last year on them a little too much, now I'm starting to rethink that maybe this is kind of a year for them to jump up. If any year, it would be this year. And so I've got a few that I want to go through and give us your comments over in the chat, and or call in to our call-in line. And then we're going to talk about, because, top 25 is going to take some time. And then we're going to talk about kind of the ended up is the Clemson schedule review. We haven't really taken the time out to look at Clemson's schedule and to see what's going on with that, kind of go week by week and talk about the opponent kind of at a high level, and kind of give our thoughts on maybe what game might be a trap game for the Tigers, and maybe what game that we would like the players to maybe circle on their calendar to not lose their focus, let's just say. So got an exciting show. Again, thank you so much for joining in, John, Giggled, Anu, over on YouTube. I appreciate it. I'm looking over on Facebook now. We've got Kevron and Bill and a couple others. Go ahead and get in the chat. We got a few people watching now over on Facebook and YouTube. Go ahead and get in now and tell us where you're watching us from. We can give you a shout out. We always love to give shout outs here. And remember, stay to the end of the show and you can get to pick what song we walk out on, what song we end the show on. Could be your choice. We'll be your DJ. We'll be your jukebox tonight. But Houston, let's get into it. Enough of me just goofing off here. Let's get into this. The first thing I want to talk about was an article that recently came out through ACCsports.com, which is a website I've never really heard of, but I just kind of stumbled across it. You know how you get when you stumble across a website. And one of the best websites I've ever stumbled across is southlandclub.com. And really, I didn't stumble across it. Houston and I created it. So go check out southlandclub.com if you want some of our stuff outside of the show. But,
shameless plug.
Yeah, shameless plug there. But again, ACCsports.com had a few things about the fans in attendance. So I wrote these things down. I wanted to kind of talk with you through these things. So Boston College has already come out and said no fans, and they still don't have a non-conference game scheduled. So they still got a few things going on there. So they're not going to have any fans at home games in the fall, and they don't have a non-conference team. Clemson is rumored. Now, I haven't 100% heard this yet. Now, I know Clemson fans are going to get on me about this, but 23% capacity is what they're thinking. What they're going to try to get from Henry, Mr. McMaster, the governor. They're going to try to get 23%, which would be about 16,000. I thought they were going to go for more, but this is according to ACCsports.com, 16,000, and they're going to need government approval. Guess what? Zach Orr. You remember Zach Orr from WCCP, The Roar? He's up in Louisville now. He sent a picture on Twitter, and it showed Louisville at like 70% or 80% capacity, and it looked like no one was there. So I can only imagine what 16,000 fans will look like. 23% capacity, especially if you spread everyone out, it's going to be really kind of weird for me. I almost feel like that maybe there should be some cool banners and graphics in the stands like they do with some of the other sports. But, like Formula One, NASCAR, whatever, they put up these big giant, blankets. And I know the Clemson graphics team is so good. It'd be kind of cool to see some of like a big giant graphic of Trevor Lawrence, in the stands. I thought that would be kind of a cool thing. But anyways, let me finish out these teams. So Duke's already came out and said they're not going to have any fans. Florida State said they're going to try to have 20 to 25% capacity. And they said they're going to try to tailgate. They're going to try to allow tailgating at Florida State. I thought was interesting. Georgia Tech said they're going to try to get 11,000, 20%. 20% is kind of a common number. I feel like that's kind of like group think there. Everybody wants to get around 20%. Louisville's still waiting for government approval, but hey, the governor just approved the Kentucky Derby at 23,000. So Louisville's kind of hopeful about 23,000. Miami hopeful to get 13,000. NC State still working with some private companies to decide what they're going to do. The Tar Heels have canceled season tickets but haven't decided what they're going to do as far as capacity. They feel like they are going to do something. Notre Dame is, as you probably heard, I know you, Houston, have heard this in the news, is going through a kind of a COVID problem right now. A bunch of students getting it, and 19 more confirmed cases this week. Classes have been suspended. No word about what they're going to do as far as the football is concerned. Pitt also, no word right now. Heinz Field is what they use, which is a professional stadium. So no word what they're going to do. Syracuse, Governor Andrew Cuomo, no fans or tailgating allowed in the state of New York there. So that's out. And then Virginia, both Virginia and Virginia Tech are mandated 1,000 fan minimum, 1,000 group gathering minimum. If you space them out enough, do you even count it as a group, really? That's my opinion. Like if you're in the West End zone and I'm over on the Hill, are we really in a group? I mean, that's a couple of church congregations away. I mean, the football field's pretty big. If I'm up in the upper deck, I don't want to be a part of your group down in the lower deck, and I definitely don't feel that way, when I am in the upper deck. But and then Wake Forest, it hasn't decided, but they're going to sell season tickets, and they're probably going to mandate mask wearing and social distancing as far as some of the stuff we've seen on Twitter for them. So when I mention that to you, I want to ask you in the fans, and I want to ask you, Houston, when I start going through this list, is there anything that I mentioned just now that kind of makes you scratch your head or draws some sort of feeling or reaction?
I know with Notre Dame, I know that they've had their outbreak, but apparently, I think they put out a statement yesterday or the day before that said they are still intending on playing. Now, I would, if I'm a gambling man with Notre Dame, I would say they're probably not going to have any fans at all at Notre Dame. When it comes to Duke and Boston College and Virginia, 1,000 fan minimum is pretty normal for the third quarter in one of those places anyway. So no fans. And I mean, I guess for Boston College, the thing that they're going to have to worry about most is not being filled with Clemson fans when you're up 56-10 in the fourth. Nah, I'm just messing with you there. But seriously, I mean, there's not. I mean, looking at the current policies, I'm not surprised. I feel like if you whatever your political leanings are, generally is kind of what they're going with. Some places a little further in the southeast are going to have fans. Some places in the northeast aren't going to have fans. North Carolina, I would be surprised. I mean, Wake Forest might have fans, but the schools in the Triangle, I would be surprised if you get more than 20% this year. It's not going to surprise me at all if that's the case. So as far as that goes, there's no real surprises as far as what we're starting with. Now, if things progress the way that they do in a positive way, like we've been seeing in the last few weeks, are these schools going to start to budge a little bit is my question. Is Clemson going to say, all right, well, the numbers are down, or we've got this, or something really awesome happened, or are we going to get to November for the Pitt game and say, all right, maybe we'll test this out towards the end of the year and maybe do 50%, or maybe do a little bit more than that if things are really, really looking good. I'm wondering if these schools are dead set in not having any fans at all, or having limited numbers for the entire year, or if they're going to have a sliding scale depending on how things go. I feel like some of the schools in the Southeast might be a little inclined to do that, but we'll see.
It's interesting. So your first thought now, correct me if I'm wrong. You said you feel like Notre Dame is probably you're gonna bet on no fans at Notre Dame.
Yeah, Jack Swarbrick, their AD, I believe is Jack Swarbrick. He had made mention of that early on in the process, where he's kind of the type of guy that was like, I don't know if we're gonna have fans at all. I think paired with their student population getting this, I would think they're probably not going to have fans, and that's why I also think schools like UNC and NC State won't either. Given that even though the athletic department, the teams might have more manageable numbers to deal with as far as this goes. I just don't know if they're going to say, hey, you know what, let's fight and try to get some more fans in the stands. It's just kind of where I see this kind of going.
Well, I can agree with Chat in the sense that if you look at the northern teams, you got to expect that they're going to have less fans than the southern teams, especially when you talk about Florida State's going to try to still tailgate, which is something that I thought nobody was going to do, but I guess they seem pretty confident. I mean, you could go up to Louisville. That's probably about as north as I would trust having a team that would really want some fans. They look like they're trying to get approval, and like I said, they've already approved the Kentucky Derby at 23,000. So you got to think the football team would be able to get the same. But again, yeah, you're talking Syracuse, you're talking Notre Dame, Pittsburgh. I would really start to wonder if they're going to be allowed. And, with everybody playing it so safe, you got to wonder if they're going to adjust that number. I think they're not going to adjust the number because it's going to me, then you get into a sticky situation of really ticking off your base of season ticket holders who decided to redshirt or opt out or defer to the next year, and then all of a sudden everything starts getting better. And then what are you going to do? You're going to sell those tickets as single game tickets or maybe package tickets to increase capacity. Now, I know most people would probably be like, well, football with more fans is going to be a good thing for everyone. But, I think a lot of people would be kind of upset to know, hey, that they started with that season ticket and now some random person's just bought a single game ticket and took their place. But I mean, I would like to see college football with more fans than what we're talking about on this sheet right here. It does seem kind of concerning. It's going to be a little different. Do you think they pipe in noise? I don't know. Probably not. I don't think they're going to do that. But it is going to be pretty weird to see. And think about this Notre Dame game, and we're going to talk about this later on about Clemson's schedule. That Notre Dame game is a big game. I mean, that's an away game against a team that a lot of people have in their top 15 of their top 25 lists. And that game with no fans is going to be weird. Notre Dame already doesn't have any wide receivers, and what are they going to do with no fans too? It's just going to be kind of piling up on Ian Book. He's going to have to do everything. He's going to have to be the running back, the wide receiver, the quarterback, and cheer himself on the sideline. So it's going to be kind of hard for Ian Book. He had to take a shot there to our fellow Irish fan there, or Irish team member. But the Tigers are coming for you. Just to put it that way. And not having any fans out there is gonna make it pretty bad if the game gets ugly. You know what I mean?
Not a great recipe. Not a great recipe.
Chat's asking if Alan has an opinion, and I originally started with this. So for those of you listening to the podcast, you'll have no idea. But Alan his screen is blank. He's not on the show tonight. He had some things come up at work, but I did find some pictures of Alan. PG. So all you guys wondering, PG. But what do you think? Maybe we go with Thinking Man, Alan. Let's or Alan Shrugs. Let's go with Alan Shrugs. Maybe we'll maybe we'll change it up as the show goes on. But we got to get Alan in here, everybody. And then chat's asking, what's Alan's opinion? With a blank screen, it's kind of hard to have an opinion. We got to get Alan in there. So just bear with me. Bear with me. I know I'm going off script here. Alan hates this when I do this, but oh man, we're gonna have him on screen shrugging for the next.
If he does this again, Morgan, then you need to just take his name out and then put a picture of Trevor Lawrence in there, and we'll just act like Trevor Lawrence is on our short show next time.
Yeah, we could do that. Hey, chat, what do you think about us putting up Trevor Lawrence on the screen? Now that would be kind of cool. Here we go. I gotta kind of readjust him here so he fits the screen. All right. Let's fade him in now. There we go. All right, we've got Alan on the screen. He's just shrugging. Let me make sure he gets on the screen on YouTube here. There he is. Look at his beautiful little shrug there. Yeah, everybody's saying, "Hey, come on, get him on here. Get him on here." Some people are worried that it's PG. They were wanting a little bit more. I'll have to get some shirtless Alan pictures. Make sure he sends me some more later on. If he's listening to this on his way home from work, he's probably gonna kill us. But it is what it is. All right. So we talked about attendance, and let's get on to the AP poll. So this is kind of our actual first segment. Let me pull up the AP poll here, which I don't know. Did it throw you off at all, Houston, that the AP poll came out and included the teams that are not going to be playing? I mean, I thought that was kind of ridiculous.
Oh, it was stupid. I think it's ridiculous, and it's the most 2020 thing to put a bunch of teams who said they're not playing this year, and it makes it more confusing. Like, I get the sentiment that Ohio State was widely panned as the second best team behind Clemson, or the third, or however you want to say it, but it just makes it more confusing. They're out. All the Pac-12 teams like Oregon are out, so take them out. Because apparently this is going to be after week one. Everyone plays a week, all these teams will go away. So a team like Ohio State is going to be one of the first teams since Michigan in 2007, when they got beat by App State, to go from the top 5 out of the top 25 poll. So why would you do that to them? You could technically make that case, even though I don't think anyone will. But it's just more confusing. It's just ridiculous to me.
Yeah, and chat's asking, what's going to happen after week one's over with. And that's what a lot of the analysts have been saying on television, is that no worries, they're just going to include them right now and be inclusive of the teams, and then, which I think is ridiculous, but and then after week one, then they have to automatically drop. And so, hey, whatever. You want to do more work for yourself, do more work for yourself. Good job. Congratulations. But let's go through it here. The list here. Number 1, Clemson with 38 votes for number 1. Ohio State, number 2 at 21 votes for number 1. Alabama, number 3 with 2 votes for number 1. And then after the top 3, so Clemson, Ohio State, Alabama, Georgia at 4, Oklahoma at 5, LSU at 6 with 1 vote for number 1. At Penn State at 7, Florida at 8, Oregon at 9, Notre Dame at 10, Auburn at 11, Wisconsin at 12, Texas A&M at 13, Texas at 14, Oklahoma State at 15, Michigan at 16, USC SoCal at 17, North Carolina 18, Minnesota 19, Cincinnati 20, UCF 21, Utah 22, Iowa State 23, Iowa 24, and Tennessee rounds out or stops at 25. Then you got some others receiving votes right outside the top 25. Memphis, Virginia Tech, Boise State, Arizona State, Miami, Louisville. I've already named a bunch of ACC teams there, so that makes you feel kind of good if you're an ACC guy. Appalachian State, Washington, Kentucky, Indiana, Baylor, California, TCU, Virginia, Navy, Florida State, SMU, Mississippi State, Air Force, Northwestern, and UAB with one vote there. So, again, kind of along the same lines as what we were thinking in our original top 25. But I wanted to kind of go back through these and take out those teams and tell you kind of what I thought my top 5 were, and also let me bring up Twitter here real quick, because we also as a group, what was it, a couple of weeks ago, Houston, where we did our own top 25. You can go check it out on at the Morgan Thomas at the Morgan T Show on Twitter. What were you saying?
No, I was going to say it was probably about a month ago. And just while you're pulling that up, I'm just kind of looking over the top 25. And I guess the thing that irritates me the most about this is the fact that there's 21 people who voted on this poll, that despite Ohio State not playing this year, they will not yield that first place vote to someone else. So 21 people, no matter what happens this year, will think that Ohio State is the best team in America, even though their conference punked out and won't let them play this year. So that's just really annoying. And if you're an Alabama fan, I'd be rightfully angry at that as well.
So I went back through and I looked at our old ranking that we did. You can go check it out on our Twitter at the Morgan T Show. And top 5, we had Clemson, Ohio State, Alabama, Penn State, and Georgia. So we liked Ohio State, Penn State. You take those two out, you got Clemson, Alabama, Georgia, and then you go down to the next in the top 10, Florida, Oklahoma. So really, let's just say you completely remove the two that we had in there. Clemson, Alabama, Georgia, Florida, Oklahoma would be our top 5. Remove those, okay? And, I had my argument. That I felt like Georgia was going to be better than Alabama and better than Alabama this year. I felt like that if any year, I always say this. People call into the Roar and they get on to me when I say this when I'm a guest on Walt or Mark Childress' show. But last year I said Georgia was going to do good. This year I'm saying that I think they're going to do good. Walt also feels like they're going to be good. Jamie Newman's there. I think it's a different team. They've got a good running back. They've got good defense. Really good offensive line. Great offensive line, really. So my top 5 would be Clemson, Georgia, Florida, Alabama. And then this is where I start getting squirrely for me, because I originally would have picked Oklahoma. And Oklahoma has a good offensive line. They have a pretty good defensive line for their conference. But they just lost their number 1 running back, and they already lost Trey Sermon to Ohio State, who now is not playing at all. You mentioned this last week. But is Spencer Rattler? Do you trust Lincoln Riley enough to tell me to stay on the bandwagon with Oklahoma? Because I got another team that I'm thinking I'm feeling better about now.
I would put Oklahoma in the top 5. I'm looking at this, and I guess the problem that I see kind of going over, because we're not too far off. I think most of our top 10 reflects similarly what the AP is, minus a couple of tweaks to it. I would say probably Clemson, Georgia, Alabama, Florida would be your 4. 5 Oklahoma, just because of Lincoln Riley, Spencer Rattler. We've seen his film. He looks really well. I like them better than LSU. I don't know if that's your team that you're talking about. I'll let you talk about that a little more, but I think a lot of people want to put LSU in the top 5. I'm not ready to do that. I think that's too high. I think they're going to be ripe for a few upsets this year, given that they lost their entire team, their entire coaching staff, everything. And, well, given that there's not going to be any fans this year, their entire fan base, since there's nobody in the stands. So I think top 5 should be Clemson, Georgia, Alabama, Florida, and Oklahoma.
Chat is already distracting me saying that they think Allen, the photo of Allen, has moved. That may or may not be actual Allen live standing that still. He is doing the mannequin challenge right now. See how long he can go for the entire show. You got us. This is actually a live feed of Allen right now. You got us. So can't pull anything over chat. But no, it wasn't LSU. LSU, we don't know their quarterback, right? We don't know anything about their quarterback. They've completely lost their entire offensive line. They lost their go-to running back. Now, they say they got a running back behind him, but they've lost Clyde Edwards-Helaire. They lost Joe Burrow. They lost all 5 offensive linemen, I think. Maybe one's returning. Maybe. And so, to me, I put a lot of value towards, one, the quarterback, which is an unknown, which is why I started worrying about Spencer Rattler, because he's an unknown. But now I agree with you in the sense we have to trust Lincoln Riley a little bit more, because the problem is Brady at LSU's gone. So not only do you have an unknown quarterback, but you also don't really know what's going to happen in the passing game, which is what he was in charge of. He's a one and done there. But LSU, again, I don't trust them. I'm talking about in the Big 12 alone. I'm actually going to probably say, that Texas is going to end up being one of the best 2 teams in the Big 12 this year. And hear me out. They have one of the best quarterbacks in the nation. Now that they're a few quarterbacks removed from the Big 10 and Pac-12. Sam Ehlinger is a pro's pro. They have one of the best defensive lines in the Big 12. Now, granted, it is the Big 12. They have one of the best offensive lines in the Big 12. And they have some pretty good running backs in the Big 12 as well. They're really a pretty well overall team. And the biggest problem they had last year was that they were young and they were injured. Well, a year later, they have more under their belt and they are healthier now. So my first thought is Texas. And then get this, Oklahoma has a pretty tough schedule to start the season out with a fresh quarterback that is going to be cutting his teeth and without a running back, a legit running back threat now. So, and also that running back that I think you mentioned when we were talking about some fantasy football things, their running back that actually would be their starter is they're saying he might be suspended for 4 games. So they're going to have an unknown quarterback and unknown running back. They still have a great offensive line, but what does that matter? Well, and what about their wide receivers? I mean, a lot of question marks there with Oklahoma. Not as many question marks with Oklahoma State. Now, I know you and Alan, I think, when we did the top 25, were a lot higher with Oklahoma State than I was originally, because they return a star quarterback, a star running back, and they have also, while they do, and I have down here that they have a top 3, or excuse me, a top 5 offensive line and defensive line in the Big 12. So I would argue to say that either Texas or Oklahoma State are going to be there. But I'm kind of leaning towards Texas with the fact that I'm waiting to see where Tom Herman actually does take this Texas team. Now, am I crazy or not? Tell me, chat. Tell me, Houston, what you think.
You're crazy. I'll go ahead and tell you why. One, now you hit on the reason why. If we're going to pick someone else other than Oklahoma, the reason to pick not Texas is Oklahoma State. You mentioned their quarterback, Spencer Sanders. You mentioned their running back, Chuba Hubbard. We're not talking about, they might have outside of Clemson. Well, I don't know, this particular year, they've got one of the top 3 wide receiving cores in the country, headlined by Tylan Wallace and Dylan Stoner. They are going to be good. They're senior laden. If they're going to do something this year, this is the year to do it. They get. I know that the other part about this that I'm thinking of, the last couple seasons, Texas has struggled mightily with Oklahoma State. Mike Gundy knows Tom Herman. He knows, for some reason, he knows how to beat Tom Herman. And that's the other part about this. Tom Herman, to me, and I don't mean this in a slight or anything like that. To me, he strikes me as kind of like a Tommy Bowden in a sense that he has some big wins. He's gotten some big wins. He's beaten Oklahoma before, but he's got some inexplicable losses to his record. You think about either last year or the year before when they lost to Maryland. Twice, actually. They lost 2 times in a row to Maryland. How are they doing that? Why are they losing that game? They're struggling with some teams that they shouldn't struggle with. And then some games that, it's a chance for them to prove themselves, like last year's Oklahoma game, and they can't push it through. So I'm not willing to bet on them just yet. Now, this could be the year. COVID year could be the year that they make that jump. But I'm going with the more senior-laden team in Oklahoma State with a proven offense to push Oklahoma for that Big 12 title.
Well, and another reason I started thinking about Oklahoma more, about this may be a slip year for them, they're always that team that loses a game or has barely wins a game that could completely ruin their season, completely kick them out of a championship game, completely kick them out of the playoffs. They somehow win that by 1 point. I believe, was it Brock Purdy and all them last year? They had a couple of games back to back where, it was like, okay, this is it. They're going into the fourth quarter losing. This is it for Oklahoma, and then they end up rallying, right? We already had Oklahoma State 11th in our previous ranking, and we had Texas 13th, Oklahoma 7th. I'm just saying we need to look at Oklahoma State again, and I think you're on the same thing with me. Not only Oklahoma State, but Texas. I think Oklahoma could end up, this would be the year of all years, to be the third best team in the Big 12. That's my thought. I mean, because if it's not Texas, then as my friend Ellis Tolbert tells me, that you got to watch out for Iowa State, because Iowa State was so close, and they could do it again. And they still got an elite quarterback. They got a great defensive line. They got a really doggone good running back, and plus their quarterback's a good running back too. So I would say, Oklahoma is going to be tough. Now, like I said, can Lincoln Riley turn just about anybody into an elite quarterback? Apparently so. We have to give him credit for that. Another thing I have on this list that I think we need to look at again is Notre Dame. Notre Dame and LSU, but really Notre Dame in the sense that they don't have any wide receivers that scare me. Their running back doesn't scare me. Ian Book is going to have to be their quarterback and their running back again this year. Okay. They lost, I think, their best defensive lineman and maybe even their linebacker. And then, as we're talking about earlier, they're going to struggle to even get approved to have fans in the stadium, which is going to be very difficult to get any kind of momentum your way, especially against elite teams like Clemson, who come in there and who have proven that they can dominate on a big stage and may just mop the floor with you when there's nobody in the stands. So my thought is maybe we need to look at Notre Dame again. We put them at 8th. Now the AP poll has them at 10. I don't know. I do lean on an elite quarterback. That's why I ranked him higher originally. I do lean on the fact that Ian Book has done really well for them. But I'm starting to get a little bit nervous having them that high. So Oklahoma's the first one, and then Notre Dame is the next one. That makes me just kind of rethink it. Am I crazy or not? Tell me, chat. Tell me, Houston.
I don't think you're crazy on this one. I think Notre Dame, I always am of the same, I'll use a Walt Deptula term, the same ilk, that believes Notre Dame consistently benefits of being put in the top 10 because of their name. And I'm not I don't see anything that jumps off the page. Ian Book's good, but he's not one of the quarterbacks that I go, man, I don't know if we can handle him. We've handled him once before, pretty easily, 30-3 in the Cotton Bowl. And I feel like with nobody in the stands in South Bend, if that's the case, that's a recipe for disaster for them. If they don't have some consistent offensive weapons to go against Clemson's pressure, they're going to have a real problem. To me, I don't even think that they're the second best team in the ACC, given that they're in the conference this year. That's UNC. I also think they're going to struggle to be third. I think you've got two to three other teams that could come up and take that presumptive third place spot, being, I think, a 3-horse race between Virginia Tech, Miami, and Louisville.
You know, I'm glad you got into that, because that was another aha thing that I'm starting to see as well too. So I kind of did a point system based on different playing groups, and then I sorted that point system out based on how I felt like the impact would be on the field, with quarterback and defensive line being high up there, offensive line being high up there, and then lower down the list, running back and secondary, things like that. But for me, I've always felt like the way Clemson built it is the way that you can be successful no matter where you're at, which is start with landing a good quarterback, and then start with winning the line of scrimmage. So and then follow that up with winning the line of scrimmage. So elite quarterback to change games and win close ones, even with below average players. Connor Shaw, obviously. And then you get a defensive line like the Power Rangers, or you just slowly build that defensive line to keep you in games and to push people back to playing third and longs more often than not to help out your quarterback. So that's kind of my thought process. And then you need an offensive line to protect the quarterback, because, like Deshaun Watson and the Texans, if you have an elite quarterback but you can't protect him, then you're really out of luck. But I've got rated higher. To your point, Houston, I've got the Tar Heels rated higher than Notre Dame. I've got not Virginia Tech. I took that back. The Tar Heels, Louisville, and Miami. Actually, Louisville tied. I have Louisville same point percentage. So the Tar Heels, Miami, a little bit higher than Notre Dame, even with the loss of Gregory Rousseau. But the Tar Heels, I think I didn't give them enough credit before. Now, originally we had them. Let me go over to Twitter again. We had UNC at 18. On my new list, let's see. 7. I have them at 13. So a little bit higher on my new list. But I think, again, the Tar Heels have an elite quarterback. They have a good offensive line, and they have 2 pretty good running backs. Now, the defense, defense kind of hurt. And I'm kind of interested to see, is Chaz Surratt gonna opt out just like just like Sage Surratt did? Because Sage, now that he's opted out of Wake Forest, that game is a joke now, because they have no one to throw the ball to. And that's unfortunate for the ACC as a whole, because he was an elite wide receiver. But again, back to what you were saying, I've got Notre Dame fighting to be maybe third, fighting to be, trying to make sure they're not fourth in the ACC. No disrespect to them, but I think a top 10 team is too much. And the same thing goes for LSU. I massively dropped LSU and Virginia Tech. I was really high on Virginia Tech. I'm going to have to kind of backtrack a little bit, because, I think that Hendon Hooker still got to show me something. They don't have a proven running back yet. He's a transfer from Kansas. And LSU, like I said, they don't have any running backs. They don't have quarterback's unproven, and then they don't have anybody in the offensive line. They got to replace the entire offensive line. Chat's saying over on Facebook, Bill's saying lost 14 players to the NFL draft. 14 starters, I believe, something close to that. You lose that many players to the NFL draft, and we're not talking about like late round guys. These are big time guys going to the NFL draft. That is a concern to me. So I feel like LSU, I have them, lower than teams like. Now, hear me out. I have Texas A&M better than LSU. I have LSU fighting along the lines of Auburn's in the world. I have Iowa State. Iowa State better than LSU. And I'll have to get back in. You heard that? You heard that line there. That means our call-in line has been frozen for right now, but we'll get back in. But I have Iowa State. I have the Tar Heels and Texas A&M. I have those teams better than LSU. I think that this is a rebuild year more than we want to give them credit to. I can see. I'm feeling a bigger drop, and I know LSU fans that like to jump in on the show and rag us about all our predictions last year being wrong. We gotta have a look in the mirror. You can't win games with a bunch of really good defensive backs. You can't win games with a really great secondary. So let me know, chat. What do you think? Am I crazy, Houston? Am I crazy?
No. I think Texas A&M is a to be determined. Now, the game is in College Station this year. I do expect fans to be present at that game. LSU, to me, I think you hit the nail on the head. I don't think they got the leadership right now on the offense. They still have Jamar Chase, and he's phenomenal, and he's alone can keep them in games. And to your point earlier, they do have a couple of great running backs. You don't have Joe Burrow. You don't have Joe Brady. You don't have any of those guys. And you're going to be struggling with teams that are already established, like Bo Nix at Auburn, Kellen Mond at Texas A&M, obviously Alabama. And I also think in a year like this with LSU, I've contend that in rebuilding years, there's always a team that can sneak up on you and get you. So could that be Mike Leach in Mississippi State? Could that be Lane Kiffin in Ole Miss? Could that be the wet dog himself, Will Muschamp, and the South Carolina Gamecocks sneaking in to Baton Rouge and getting a win? That might be a stretch, but I'm just saying there is a tendency to have these kind of sneak up games when you are rebuilding like this, and that could happen again this year with them. Like, think about a couple years ago. I believe it was 2016. They lost to Troy. It was either 2016 or 17. Rebuilding year, they lost to a team they should have beat. I expect that to happen this year as well.
And some teams that I feel like I have double checked as they've passed my test as if they're elite. Tell me if you agree, disagree, and what anybody I missed. Okay, here's 5 teams that I think are elite based on my flawed reasoning. Clemson, Georgia, Alabama, Oklahoma State, Texas. Those are the 5 teams that I'm going all in 2020 with as elite teams that have really, it's very difficult to find what flaws they have going into 2020. We'll have to watch the games to get it played out. But on paper, those 5 teams look really good to me right now.
Well, let me follow this question that you have up with another question. Since we are at a Power 3 this year, does this become the first year that we have someone from the group of 3, the Americans, CUSA, or Sun Belt, sneak in? They are able to play more non-conference games than any of the power conference that are out there. So if you saw a UCF or a Memphis or a Cincinnati or even an App State win all their games by 40 bajillion points, do you think a team sneaks in there as a potential if, let's say, the Big 12 beats up on each other and they all have 2 losses, or the SEC even beats up on each other and has 2 losses, maybe that 4th spot is filled by a group of 5 team?
I love that you mentioned that because that was next. That was next on my list to run by you and see what we thought, because I don't think American gets any love, and I'm going to give them some love right now. But I'll tell you this, before we get into that, we got to take a second. Because I'm way over. You know, if we were back on the radio again, which I need to reach out to the guys on the radio and see if we're going to be back replayed on the radio. If we do, we'll have to start doing some breaks during the show, you know. But let me tell you about our second segment sponsor, and that is Tiger Sports Shop. We don't just dress for success, we TS for success. That is tigersports.com at Tiger Sports Shop, downtown Clemson, or on Highway 123, Tiger Boulevard. We appreciate their support since last season. We really appreciate that. They hook us up with some nice threads to wear on the show, so we don't look crazy as we're going through things. And I currently have a Vineyard Vines Clemson polo on. It's a little bit big for me now. You know, I'm a little bit down in the weight. I probably don't need a large anymore, but still fits great, still feels great, and really appreciate that. Now I'm on a different I'm on a different screen, and we don't have Alan. We missing Alan here. Let me get him back up on. I know the fans are gonna be so mad that he disappeared if I don't get him on here.
Well, it's time to put in Trevor Lawrence in this one. You need to sub him in for Trevor.
It's going to take me a second to put Trevor in. But so I got Alan back on the screen. And again, the call-in line is froze right now, so we'll take that down too. But again, thank you so much, Sean and Julie, for supporting the show. Alan is wearing one of their Tiger Sports exclusive apparel polo. Thank you for showing it off, Al, so well and being so still as I talk about the polo you are wearing. And then I am wearing a Vineyard Vines one as well. My wife and I, every 1 week before the season starts, we go to Tiger Sports Shop and get our new Clemson threads, and we ask that you do as well. Go check them out and tell them that you heard about them from the Morgan Thomas Show. Again, thank you for supporting us, Tiger Sports Shop.
Morgan, before you go into that, I do want to shout out Tiger Sports Shop. We went to Clemson this weekend. I was getting my diploma framed, walked in there. We were supporting a lot of different small businesses in Clemson, but I wanted to get an actual mask that fit me if I'm going into stores. So I got a couple of some really cool looking Clemson camouflage gaiters, the gator masks that go up, and I got those. So Tiger Sports Shop did an awesome job getting me hooked up with that. So I encourage everybody, especially supporting small businesses in that time, go support Tiger Sports Shop.
Yeah, we really appreciate them being a part of the show. So to get back to your original question, and that was, what about these non-Power 5 teams or conferences out there? I'm looking, and I evaluated Cincinnati, I evaluated Central Florida, I evaluated Memphis. Those are the three that I think deserve some discussion. Now, my thing is Cincinnati, Central Florida, both rated above Memphis. Now, explain to me how that makes any sense, considering last year Memphis doubled up on Cincinnati. Correct me if I'm wrong. Memphis beat Cincinnati at home, then turned around and beat them in the bowl game, in their conference game, back to back. They're returning a league-leading wide receiver, a league-leading running back, and a league-leading quarterback. Now, they do lose their coach, and the coach that's there has only coached one game, and that was the championship game. But he is a product of Norvell. He's been there. So he's not going to be completely clueless. Does losing a head coach matter that much, or am I missing something there? Why isn't Memphis in the top 25, and why aren't they above these teams, considering they're also returning a good majority of their players?
I'm not so sure about Cincinnati. Cincinnati is a good team in the AAC. They're going to give problems to a lot of people. I just don't see them being ranked higher than Memphis. As long as Memphis has Brady White, and as long as Memphis has Kenneth Gainwell, I think they're better than Cincinnati. Now, I'm not sure. I don't know their roster well enough to know how much Memphis lost on the defensive side of the ball. But still, that offensive explosiveness they have with the Blue Tigers of Memphis, I think that they hold up a little bit better. Now, UCF, I can understand. I know they were dealing with a lot of injuries last year. I know that they're still waiting to see what they can do with Mackenzie Milton after his horrific injury 2 years ago. But you have a great quarterback in Dylan Gabriel. You have Robert McCray at running back. I think they've still got No, I was about to misspeak. I think they were about to have that Killian running back that they had, but I think he might have graduated. But you still have a ton of offensive explosive firepower with UCF. They're not injured this year. I think they're going to be really good, and I think between them and Memphis, they may have the best crack at. And I guess Cincinnati is like a distant third there. They still have a shot, but I don't see seeing it happening. But I could see UCF or Memphis maybe cracking that fourth and final spot if that's where we are on playoff Sunday.
Yeah, and really, when you look at it, I mean, in their all AAC team projections, according to Athlon, you're looking at, on the defensive side, their cornerback, TJ Carter. And I don't see anybody else on the defense. Now, UCF has a ton of people on the defense, first team, second team projections, and Cincinnati does as well. So it has to be something to do with the defense and not having some of those returners there. It looks like defensive line, they lose a key linebacker and a key defensive end, and their secondary is all fresh as well too. So a lot of changes on the defensive front for Memphis. So that may be why they kind of dropped a little bit. But to me, I guess I've been on the road rage too much. I've been on with Walt too much because, you know what? Do we really give defense that much credit? I mean, if you're returning DeMonte Coxey, Brady White, and Kenneth Gainwell, 3 top guys in that conference, how can you can't really discredit that. You really got to say, hey, they're going to be able to hang at least offensively with the rest of the AAC, with those other top teams. My thing is this too. They're coming in after showing really good strength at the end of the season. I want to see them get a little bit more respect than that. I think that they could repeat and go to the championship game again. So that's why I'm a little bit disappointed that they weren't even in the top 25. I mean, you've got Tennessee in the top 25, but you don't put Memphis in the top 25 for the AP poll. That's a little bit ridiculous to me.
Yeah, I'm gonna wait to see, let this play out, because I do know in the past, before this past season, Mike Norville had defensive issues they struggled with. You think about the 2017 season, where basically they had UCF beat twice and couldn't hang on to that lead. Ended up losing both of those games. So defensive issues might be a problem going forward into the 2020 season. But I do think that, to your point, they do have an explosive enough offense to keep them in that contention. I just wonder if playing a team like UCF this year, they'll be able to keep up with them or not have any issues scoring on UCF or being stopped by UCF.
And here's another thing that makes me feel like that they'll be kept out. So kind of back to your original, answering your total question. I was chatting with Walt about this too last Friday. If you look at the schedule, the way it works out, hear me out with this. This might be completely crazy, but Virginia Tech doesn't play Notre Dame. But Virginia Tech plays Clemson, and Notre Dame plays Clemson. Now, they all play a lot of the other teams in there, but Virginia Tech doesn't play Notre Dame. So let's just say that both teams run the table, but Notre Dame loses to Clemson earlier in the season. All the teams, like Clemson, Virginia Tech, Notre Dame, don't lose a game except for the fact that Clemson beats Notre Dame in South Bend. That means that the December 5th game against Virginia Tech, Clemson goes to Blacksburg, plays an undefeated Virginia Tech team as an undefeated Clemson team, and then if Clemson wins, then Virginia Tech is a one-loss team. Both Virginia Tech and Notre Dame have a loss to Clemson. That's their only loss. So then you got a problem. You got 2 one-loss teams. Now, I know you're going to tell me, Morgan, There's no way that's going to happen in the ACC because they're going to cannibalize each other. Now, I know that may happen. That may very likely be like the Coastal Division last year when the team you thought was going to win loses and the team you thought was going to lose wins, and then vice versa the next week something completely different happens. There's no momentum as far as wins and losses when it comes to those coastal teams. So I don't trust them. But I'm just saying that there's a possibility that you've got two teams, their only loss to be Clemson. Two teams that I think are going to be some of the better teams in the ACC. But still, what do you do then? Now Houston, you mentioned to me, I don't know if they've come out with a tiebreaker scenario, at least in the ACC, but you mentioned to me you think it might be point differential. Well, then that comes into account. Now, maybe I'm crazy. Hear me out. Clemson goes into Virginia Tech, and Virginia Tech's telling their team, hey, Clemson beat Notre Dame by 14. We just can't lose. It doesn't matter if we win. We just can't lose by more than 14. We got to at least lose by 13 or less. So is that a likely scenario, or maybe I'm just overthinking it?
It could be. I mean, that was just kind of thrown out there. I mean, I know that some conferences like the Big 12 went on AP ranking or BCS rankings, which I don't really like that because that allows, writers or computers in the media to be able to pick who the higher ranked team is if they've all lost to one another. I think that could be a likely scenario because you're right. If Clemson goes into Notre Dame and wallops them and beats them by 21, and then Virginia Tech plays Clemson at the end of the year, well, they know that, hey, look, we're undefeated. As long as we don't get blown off the field, we give a good game, then maybe we still get to play this team a week later or 2 weeks later, depending on how the schedule sets up for the ACC championship game. That might be the determinant factor because some teams don't play each other in this 15-game schedule or the 15-team conference. So that might be a determinant factor is how you fare and point totals against common opponents.
Yeah, point totals against common opponents. And that leads me to my thought about the SEC. Now, you're saying, Morgan, that'll never happen to the ACC. And I get it. You don't have to like tell me your point on that. Listen, hear me out in the SEC. Look at the schedules. Alabama and Florida have one common opponent that LSU does not have. And that is that LSU doesn't play Georgia. So Alabama, Florida play Georgia. Now, if my prediction is correct and Georgia wins every game, let's just say they win every game, and Alabama wins every game but Georgia, and then that puts it on the table that Florida wins every game but Georgia. So then you have LSU who loses to Florida and Alabama because LSU does not play Florida but plays Florida, Alabama. Does not play Georgia. LSU 8-2, Alabama 9-1, Florida 9-1, Georgia 10-0. Who goes to the SEC championship game? Is it again the same scenario where you've got two 9-1 teams, and then point differential is the reason? So who did worse, or who was the better of the losses, right? Who was the better of the losses? And then you have a scenario where same thing in the ACC. You have a one-loss team kept out of the championship game demanding to be put in to the playoffs. So I say all this to say there could be that's two scenarios. Now it's less likely in the ACC, but I could totally see Florida losing one game and Alabama losing one game. So tell me that I'm crazy on that, because then if you have one-loss teams that don't make it to the championship game and they're the SEC, the conference that's been leading the charge to even play college football, there ain't no way they're getting an American athletic conference in there. No way.
Well, I'll say this. Now, the one thing that we have to factor in, I think the difference between the ACC and SEC this year, the SEC still has divisions. I think this year there's still no changes where it's not an amalgamation where you play all this and whatnot. The SEC still has divisions. So there is a potential scenario where, let's say Georgia loses to Florida, Florida and Alabama play in the SEC championship game, and Florida gets beat by 30 points by Alabama, and they only beat Georgia on a fluke missed extra point in overtime or something like that, and then Georgia goes on a tear. That's happened before. We've seen this with something like Ohio State a couple years ago, with them making it into the playoff and all that. Kind of had similar things like that happen. They made it in. Barely. They won the conference, but they had, other teams claiming that they shouldn't have made it in the year that they made it. I think you have that opportunity this year. Or better example, 2017, Alabama didn't even make it to the SEC championship game because they lost to both. They made it to the playoff because they lost to Auburn. And Auburn went to the SEC championship, got blown out by Georgia. And Auburn only beat, I believe that year, they beat Alabama 26-14. Alabama slides in and wins the national championship. That could happen this year with this. Now, it just depends on how many losses. Everybody's playing a 10-game schedule when it comes to the Power 3 conferences. We haven't had anybody win a championship or make it a deep run into the playoff with a 9-game conference schedule. So what's going to happen with a 10-game conference schedule? And that's why I think someone like the AAC might stand a chance to slide one in there at the last week of the season.
My thought is, I don't know. I feel like it. I feel like I'm getting sold the idea that the AAC has a better chance, and I'm not buying it. I think they actually have a worse chance because they're not playing outside of their division. They're not going to be playing any SEC teams. As far as I know, they're not playing any ACC teams. And so I just think it's going to be very difficult for that. Now go back to your point of the SEC splitting up. Now that I didn't know. I didn't hear I thought they had done like the ACC. I didn't hear that they had kept divisions. If they kept divisions, that helps, but there still could be a scenario. I went through week by week. There could still be a scenario where there's a multiple one-loss teams in the ACC and the SEC, and there's a scenario there where the only loss is to the same team. And so then you have to decide. Now, again, it necessarily doesn't hurt the fact that, that it kind of gets out of there the fact that we know that Florida and Georgia are on the same side, on the same division. So in that sense, my first thought or my first concern is kind of out there if they keep the divisions. But there's still the concern as like what you were saying, where Alabama gets in as a one-loss team. Florida doesn't get in as a one-loss team because they lost to Georgia. So it's Alabama, Georgia. And then, what do you have? If Alabama loses to Georgia, then Alabama's 2-loss. Do you then put in Florida? Does Florida, who didn't play in an extra game, get put in? Or what if Georgia loses? Then you have Georgia and Florida as both 1-losses, and they're all kind of 1-loss to each other. And so then it to me, then it furthers the gap between those AAC teams. But again, those are just some off the wall thoughts that I had about the AP poll. And chat's getting in here. Let me get over to Facebook. Bill getting in here saying we furloughed Allen because he was making too much money. He exceeded our salary cutoff. Actually, Bill, not only did we furlough him, but he makes over $400,000. So he's up there in the Dabo Swinney range. We're asking for 10% back from Allen. We're still waiting to hear back from him on whether or not he's going to give his 10% back. But we're still waiting on that, Bill. So just in case you were wondering. But again, that's another breaking news that just was released through Will Vandervoort and over there at the Clemson Insider is that it's approved. All athletic employees who make over $400,000 are now going to voluntarily give back 10% of their salary. This includes President Clements, and this includes Dabo Swinney, Brad Brownell, Amanda Butler, and I believe Radakovich, as well. I'm not 100% sure, but anybody it's part of the athletic department that makes over $400,000 is going to give back 10%. So my numbers are right, Houston. That looks like, because some of the middle of the state people were saying, well, Will Muschamp's giving back 10%. Where's Sweeney at in this? He's the highest paid guy out there. Well, now it's out there. He's giving back. That makes about what, $1 million giving back, almost 930,000 or something like that giving back. I mean, hopefully that helps the university be able to continue to operate smoothly through this pandemic.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. It's really unfortunate about the employees that are being furloughed. That's just kind of a sign of what's going on right now and kind of the dire straits that the university is being put in. I kind of figured something like this would happen. You figure some of the coaches that are making money like Dabo or even Brad Brownell or Amanda Butler or Monty Lee, they're going to be fine. But it's really the employees that are being furloughed that you really hate it for. And you just kind of got to grit your teeth and get through this.
All right, so let's pull up our third segment sponsor. We're going to finish the show with our Clemson schedule review. Just a quick high-level overview of the schedule. Heating and Cooling Services, Inc. If you need any HVAC work, whether it be residential or commercial needs, go check out Jason or Mark Trammell over there at Heating Cooling Services, Inc. They not only do residential, they did Allen, but they worked on Allen's house, but also they did commercial where they helped out another sponsor of ours, Tiger Sports Shop. So whatever you need, 864-224-7655. Again, let them know that the Morgan Thomas Show sent you. Al, Houston, Morgan, we recommend Heating Cooling Services, Inc. They've been with us for over a year now as a sponsor. We appreciate their support. Jason and Mark, we really appreciate it. Thank you guys so much. And let's get over to segment number 3. And we're going to talk about Clemson's schedule. So let's run through it real quick, Houston. You have the schedule up so you can look at it. I want to make sure you're eyeballing it here with us. But game number 1, September 12th at Wake Forest. I didn't really like that the first game of the season was an away game. And then again, no Sage Surratt now. Sam Hartman has nobody to throw to. Attendance looking like they still haven't decided what they're going to do there. Definitely going to have to wear a mask if you go to Wake Forest or going to go to that game. My thoughts are, we'll go. What do you think as far as the win goes? I'm thinking easy win there.
Yeah, Dunk City. We're going to blow that team out. Easy win for Clemson.
Next up, Clemson actually going to be able to play the Citadel. They're going to come home and have, let's see, 1, 2, 3 home games in a row, which I like to see. September 19th versus the Citadel. I think that's going to be a game. Question is really, how long will Clemson starters be out there? I'm thinking less than 1 quarter, especially with given the circumstances. And I'm also going to say, do we know if this is going to be like the purple out game? If that's even going to exist, I don't even know with 16,000 fans. But do we know if it's going to be a purple out game early on in the year? Maybe the first home game of the season, you're going to be told to wear purple? That's going to be weird.
I don't think that's going to be the case. I mean, they haven't said any kind of promotional stuff. I'd imagine we'd still probably have 1 purple out game this year. Maybe this year it's the purple out with the orange pants. Haven't seen that combination since I was a freshman in college. I'd love to see it again. But once again, I think it's going to be kind of similar to the Charlotte game last year. Trevor comes out, throws a couple touchdowns, yank him, and let DJ do the rest of the work that day.
I'm going to tell you, I hate that combination, purple and orange. I hate that combination. I don't want them to do that. And also, did you go to southlandclub.com and look at the article I posted about orange breeches and the history behind that? That would have to be a championship game, Houston. It can't just be any game. It can't just be military appreciation. It has to be a championship game to wear orange breeches. And if you're going to say purple and orange, then you're saying military appreciation. It's never going to happen in that sense. Those 2 games cannot coincide. So I'm sorry to burst your bubble there. No orange and purple. I hope they burn that combination. Never want to see it again. Don't like it. Don't like it. I'm just going to leave it there. But, all right, so then they get October 3rd versus Virginia. You know, Brennan Armstrong, I went and watched some of his highlight film. I didn't realize he was left-handed. I guess I just missed that. But he kind of moves around the pocket, kind of like a little bit of like a Tim Tebow type. He likes to run the ball. But one thing I noticed in film, I'm curious to see if this happens in college. Every run to the right was not a like he was looking to pass and then decided to run. It looked like every film clip he had running to the right was a designed run, a called run. The only time he made a decision whether or not to throw it or run it was when he was going to his left. So I'm curious to see how he interacts in college. Hopefully he doesn't have that tendency anymore, because that'd be a huge deal. But bold prediction for that game, Mike Jones or Trenton Simpson has a huge game because of his style of rolling out so consistently. That, Sam guy is going to get a lot of action.
Yeah, I think it's going to be Virginia lost a lot off their championship team last year, especially Bryce Perkins. Losing a playmaker like him, I was surprised how well he played against us. I know the scoreboard doesn't indicate how well he played. That early point of the game, he came out firing against them, but eventually just ran out of gas, and Clemson kind of imposed their will on him. But losing their playmaker, their prime playmaker like Bryce Perkins, and you even lose your leading wide receiver Jesus Dubois. I just don't see them keeping up. They may do like last year, keep it close early. Clemson just pulls away by a lot late.
Yeah, I don't think that's got me. When you look at how they dominated in the ACC championship game, I don't think that's going to be a problem. I think Coach Venables is going to really get after it. October 10th versus Miami, another home game. I'm curious to see what D'Eriq King can do. I got them ranked higher than originally thought. I've given him a little bit more credit now. Maybe I have to give Allen some credit for that. But I'm going to say that, this could be a game where Clemson's secondary gets a little bit exposed and some Clemson fans get a little bit frustrated. You've got a quarterback that can obviously throw the ball, that can obviously move around the pocket, very confident, got some skill, did really well at Houston. And Clemson's secondary, as Walt Deptula pointed out to me the end of last week, Clemson's secondary is very young. And Landon Zanders is going to be tested. Nolan Turner and DK are really the only two returners. And then you've got Andrew Booth as a new starter there over there with Mario Goodrich, who hasn't had a lot of starting time. So I think this is the game where Clemson gets tested the most via the passing game.
I think the counter to that is this could also be the game that Miami's offense gets exposed as well. I don't think that Rhett Lashley is an amazing coordinator. I think he was the guy that was supporting the guy with Gus Malzahn. D'Eriq King is good, but how good is his offensive line? How good is his running game? And if you're able to force him to just throw the ball, that could be problematic even with a young secondary, especially with the defensive front that Clemson has.
I could see that. And then after that, that's 3 games in a row at home. They go to Georgia Tech. I'm curious to see how long it takes to start seeing Jeff Sims, their big-time top dual-threat quarterback that they brought in, stole from Florida State and brought him in. The secondary is returning a lot of starters, and the linebacker core is returning a lot of starters. But this is also the team of those same guys that got torched 52-14 and had a bunch of third and fourth string guys on the field just last year. I think they're still 1, 2, maybe 3 years away. Jeff Collins is doing the right things. He's promoting and marketing the team well. I just don't see it yet, especially when I'm not really feeling their quarterback situation until they get maybe Sims in there more full-time. So another blowout, and to move it forward, come home to play Syracuse the week before Halloween. Again, Syracuse has less and lost 41-6. So I just don't. I think Syracuse is going to be one of the worst teams in the ACC. A lot of people say, "Oh, well, they could rebound this year." I don't see it, and so that's why I'm going 2 back-to-back wins there. Clemson stays undefeated going into Halloween.
I agree with both of those games. Georgia Tech could be a bowl team this year. I think they have a decent enough team to win 5 games. I'm assuming that's the process to get to a bowl this year. But Clemson's going to just wipe the floor with them. Syracuse, same thing. I'm not impressed with Tommy DeVito. Ever since Eric Dungy left that program, it's a shell of themselves. And Dino Babers is really struggling to kind of find his own. I don't think that this year is going to be any different. I think Clemson is going to dominate.
And as we talked about with Dino Babers before, really, Eric Dungy was the driving force behind why he did so well. Ever since not having Eric Dungy, he's actually a losing head coach with a losing record. And so everybody likes to talk about that Big 10-win season, but he's really not that good without Eric Dungy. And then they host Boston College October 31st, Halloween. Exciting game there. I think that Boston College, Walt had them picked as like a surprise team. Martin Jarman dumped Steve Adazio and then left for UCLA within months later. And yes, he did get Jeff Hafley in there, some bunch of NFL kind of assistants in there as well. So you got to think their defense is going to get better. But they lost 59-7 last year to Clemson. I don't really see any improvement really from those guys. So I'm going, another kind of easy game moving into one of the biggest games of the season for the Tigers.
Yeah, and the fact that it's in Clemson again this year, they have 2 very talented running backs. You also get Phil Jurkovec from Notre Dame. So there's talent there. I just don't think there's near enough, though. And you would have to completely revamp that offense from what you've been doing with the standard ground and pound. I think Clemson's going to tear it up that day.
You got Notre Dame before an open week. I've got at Notre Dame. Again, like I said earlier on the show, kind of gave away my hand here. Receivers gone. Running back, Jafar Armstrong, not really intimidating me right now. Ian Book is all alone. It's him and no one else. And with no fans, makes it even harder. I'm going to say that Clemson goes in there with their experience and with the offense clicking on all cylinders. November, championship phase. And so you start getting that mindset going, turning it on, and shutting it down. I think Clemson handles business in a primetime game and then also handles it knowing that they get a week to rest.
Yes, I think it's a big day for the secondary. I think even though they may have their struggles at the beginning, I think people like Landon Zander and Nolan Turner will have a big day. Nolan Turner's had experience with Notre Dame, had a big game against them in the Cotton Bowl. I think he has it again. I think the defensive front eats. I think Clemson pulls away and wins by 10+.
And then I've got November 21st at Florida State. A little bit concerned it's at Florida State. It's going to be later on in the season, so you got to think Mike Norvell's got to get more comfortable. His team's got to get more comfortable with him as the time goes on. But still, my number one ranking factor that we talked about earlier, quarterback, James Blackman, not one. Throw him out. He's no good. The offensive line, another top 3 need for a team to be dominant, not one. Defensive line, they have it. They have the defensive line. Got to give them that. And they have a pretty decent running back. But offensive line, terrible. Quarterback, terrible. Defense is returning just about everybody. They lost about two or three guys last year. So I'm feeling good about their defense. Not so good about their offensive line or their quarterback. I think Clemson goes in and wins that game. And then I'm concerned about Pittsburgh only because that I think that it's kind of